Welcome to Weather HQ. I'm Paolo del Rosario. This week, we've covered a range of crucial topics, including the environmental impact of Mount Canlaon's eruption, the Office of the Civil Defense relief efforts, and the DOST's new flood monitoring system in Cagayan de Oro. We also talked about how the culinary industry can support sustainability. To begin, here's my interview with Mr. Chris Bendino, the Deputy Chief of Staff and spokesperson of the OCD, where we discuss the environmental impacts of Mount Canlaon and the agency's continuing relief efforts.
Well, first, PVOLCS is considering this as a minor eruption. No? That's why there's no elevation of the alert level to 4. It's still maintained at alert level 3. But considering the eruption, which had a height of about 4,000 meters, there is significant ashfall in the surrounding areas and barangays. That's why the initial demand from the local government units would be for face masks and water. And for the OCD, we have prepositioned around 12,000 face masks in the area that is ready to complement those that will be deployed by the LGUs. And of course, the LGUs, as well as the Philippine Red Cross, also deployed water rationing trucks to cater to the needs of our kababayans.
You mentioned po that the face masks are one of the first actions taken by the OCD, or at least to help address yung ashfall po. But in terms of the other resources that are being deployed there, especially when it comes to the food and water provisions for those in any evacuation centers, could you give us more clarity on the type of resources available po?
Yes. Regarding food items, our DSWD has ready items. Yung kanilang mga warehousing, they have already put up the system that they are ready to deploy at any given time around 200,000 food packs. So with respect to the deployment of food packs, this is handled by the SWD, and I'll verify, but I'm pretty sure that they've already deployed this already.
Sir, are there any areas in particular that have been affected na medyo nahihirapan puntahan ng relief efforts?
Well, we have to consider that it was advantageous for us to maintain our citizens in the evacuation centers. So very minimal need for forced evacuation. We just encountered a few individuals because if you remember, we allowed certain individuals to go back within the 6-kilometer danger zone for purposes of planting, harvesting. So it was just a very limited number for purposes of evacuation. But considering the ashfall, we are anticipating perhaps a significant increase as to number of families and individuals who might seek shelter in our evacuation centers. At present, we're monitoring 5 affected LGUs. That's a total of 22 evacuation centers.
A challenge, sir, in La Carlota City, according to the DRRMO, is that they have had to conduct water filtration due to contamination po sa water supply po nila. Is this something the OCD is helping support? And of course, how much of an issue is yung clean and safe drinking water po in the affected areas?
That's correct. A necessary consequence of ashfall would be contamination of our water resources. Hence, there is really a significant need for water filtration. For purposes of water filtration, from just to give you some numbers, from February 6 to April 7, a total of 160,000 liters for potable water has been filtered and processed. For purposes of cleaning, hygiene, and washing, that would be a total of 25,700 liters of water. That's a total of almost 200,000 liters of water. Again, this will be significantly affected by the sources of water that we can get. But our resources are there. The water filtration systems of OCD, as well as the other LGUs, are there in the areas to cater to the needs of our kababayans.
Is there any extra medical support po, considering the fact that the ashfall does affect, could actually exacerbate mga respiratory problems, especially for those in the affected areas? You mentioned giving out yung mga face masks po, but for those who have been adversely affected by the ashfall, is there any extra medical services being provided to those, especially sa mga evacuation centers po natin?
That's correct. If you recall, perhaps weeks before, the president had already instructed the creation of the Task Force Canlaon. And part of its function is to ensure the inventory of medicines in the area, considering that we have protracted effects of Canlaon. And this will be, again, affected by the recent eruption. But in terms of inventory of medical supplies, it has been checked just last week, and we have sufficient medical supplies to address this issue.
You mentioned, po, that this task force actually has been present before this eruption. In fact, this situation has been monitored for quite a significant period, po. Just how effective do you feel was the preemptive preparations, po, for this particular eruption, considering there haven't had to be forced evacuations or very limited, po, and of course there was even ways for resources already in place by the time the eruption did happen.
Okay, just to clarify, Paolo, no, the task force Canlaon that was created by the president, this is the interagency task force. No?
Yes, po.
But the OCD already, through the Secretary of National Defense, created a task force Canlaon within OCD that is chaired by Director Raul Fernandez. Now, in terms of the actions done for the OCD task force Canlaon, again, you're correct. No, all preemptive measures really benefited us. No, the fact that we asked our citizens to stay in the evacuation centers. I guess the results would be, and we're still hoping that this will be. We have zero casualty with the recent eruption. So I think the preemptive measures are really effective. Now, as to the task force Canlaon created by the president, this looks to the long term as to what solutions can be done, because his comment is that it's very clear. No, this cannot happen every single time Mount Canlaon will erupt. So task force Canlaon, as created by the president, will now look towards long-term solutions, location of areas outside the permanent danger zones, relocation of our citizens who are living within the permanent danger zone of 4 kilometers. And this will go hand in hand. We have both short-term and long-term solutions in the pipeline.
You mentioned, po, long-term effects, and that actually leads me to my next question. Of course, environmentally, there will be consequences from the eruption, especially when it comes to yung agriculture sector po natin, of course, the local ecosystems. Are there any steps already being taken to mitigate any of the adverse effects, especially sa agriculture po natin?
That's correct. No? Close to 130 million already is in terms of damage to agriculture has been recorded. Now, as to solutions, we are coordinating with our Department of Agriculture what can be done for our farmers to help them recover from this disaster. No? Now, as you also correctly pointed out, there are environmental impacts. Of course, ashfall will affect the ability of plants for photosynthesis, and of course, our crops. No? So we are closely monitoring. And again, one of the functions of the Task Force Canlaon, as created by the President, is to identify areas that will be safe for purposes of planting, for purposes of these farming activities. No? So there are programs in place, and I think the Department of Agriculture will also release seedlings for our farmers so that they can, again, slowly recover from this disaster.
You mentioned a while ago that a lot of preemptive measures were already taken, considering na medyo expected po that Mount Canlaon would be active. And it turned out to be true, especially with the recent eruption. Does this mean that those in the evacuation centers are actually closer to actually returning to their homes, or are they going to be kept there still as a precautionary measure for the foreseeable future?
Okay, first, I think we've discussed this before, no? That there's no exact science to predict
Yes.
eruptions of volcanoes. But based on the recent data from PHIVOLCS, they are considering this still as a minor eruption, and the possibility of a major eruption is still there. No? So in terms of the decision whether or not to allow our citizens to return to their homes, I think we'll have to rely on PHIVOLCS for that.
Mm-hmm. Considering that we do have to rely on PHIVOLCS decision, and of course, at the moment, it doesn't seem like babalik po sila based on the recent data. How are the resources of the OCD and, of course, the other resources coming in to be able to handle a more protracted stay, especially right now na there's probably added stress on yung resources, especially after the recent eruption?
That's very true, no? But I think the message of the president is very clear. He compared the services with respect to disaster response to that of a conveyor belt. So the impression is that you just have to keep on going, providing services just continuously. With the recent passage of the guidelines for the Quick Response Fund, I think that will really help for us to be able to procure additional items to support this protracted stay of our citizens in the evacuation centers. The DSWD, they're just really like a working factory, day in, day out, they just produce food packs. And like what I said, they are ready to deploy 200,000 food packs at any given time at any location in the Philippines. Our strengthening of our disaster risk reduction management plans from the local to the barangay levels is there. So we are ready to respond to this disaster. It's just really asking for patience for our citizens. I know that it's very difficult for you to stay in the evacuation center, but we really cannot afford to risk your safety just for the sake of you returning to your houses. So kapit lang po, no? Just a little more patience. Hopefully, this will really pass.
Sir Chris, for those wondering, especially those in the area, how can they stay updated po with regard to all of the announcements and, of course, all the progress made by the OCD?
Yes, we suggest to attentively listen to announcements from your LGUs because the coordination is there from the national government all the way to your LGUs. If you want to have additional information, you may visit the website of OCD, the NDRMC, and I think the more important website to visit is the one of UVolcs, no? For you to be able to be updated of situational reports, especially with respect to volcanic eruptions.
When we return, we'll take a closer look at the newly launched flood monitoring system in Cagayan de Oro, which will contribute to the Philippines' broader disaster risk reduction strategy. Don't go away. With our HQ, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching Weather HQ. The Department of Science and Technology, in partnership with the DOST Pag-asa, has launched the Cagayan de Oro River Basin Flood Forecasting and Warning System, which will play a vital role in enhancing flood forecasting and monitoring in northern Mindanao. To explore the impact of this initiative further, here's my interview with Mr. Roy Badilla, the DOST Pag-asa Deputy Administrator for Operations and Services.
Okay, yung Cagayan de Oro River Basin is one of the major river basins dito sa Pilipinas. Napakalaki ng problema natin dito sa baha dahil unang-una, yung ma-epekto talaga dito ay yung flash flood, tinatawag natin. Ito yung mga kind of flooding kung saan mabilis po yung pagdaloy ng tubig from the mountains down to the city of Cagayan de Oro. Kung mapapansin natin, may mga mountain ranges upstream ng Cagayan de Oro na siyang mga nagbibigay ng steep slopes papunta po sa Cagayan de Oro. So kung makikita natin sa monitor natin ngayon, mga mountains po yung nasa taas, so napakababa po ng Cagayan de Oro. So iyon po yung nagbibigay sa atin ng malaking problema at saka napakalaking challenge para sa flood forecast and early warning system. Plus, circular po yung shape ng ating Cagayan de Oro River Basin, meaning madali po siyang maka-apekto doon sa Cagayan de Oro compared doon sa longitudinal or elongated na mga river basins kung saan meron tayong enough time para mag-warn sa people in Cagayan de Oro.
So yung description ng bagong system po ninyo is cutting edge po ito. What makes it cutting edge? Ano po ang mga bago sa sistema nito? And of course, what is special about yung warning system and how can it benefit yung Cagayan de Oro?
Maliban po kasi doon sa normal natin na ilinalagay ng mga rainfall and automatic rain gauges, ito po yung mga kadalasan na naka-install sa ating mga major river basins. Mga automated po ito, sir. Automated yung transmission. Maliban po doon, mayroon po tayong linagay na dalawang X-band radar. So itong X-band radar na ito po yung magtutulong sa atin mag-estimate ng rainfall. Hindi pa po bumabagsak or hindi pa nakakarating sa lupa ang mga tubig ulan, ay na-estimate na po natin or nalalaman na natin kung saan or kung gaano kalaki yung tubig na babagsak doon sa taas, ganun din sa baba. So madali po nating ma-forecast yung ating mga water level downstream or kung kailan maapektuhan yung mga tao natin or community downstream ng Cagayan.
Sir, one of the biggest factors sa disaster risk reduction is the fact na kailangan may lead time yung mga citizens to and of course yung mga LGU para mag-respond sa mga early warnings. Just how much early warning can this system give yung mga LGUs, mga decision makers po natin with this new system, especially when it comes to yung flood mitigation po?
Okay. Maliban po doon sa mga radars natin, kasi ang tama po kayo, kailangan talaga natin ng extra lead time. Kasi kung titingnan natin yung ating river basin, medyo may kaliitan po siya, around 1,500 square kilometers lang po siya, at katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, circular and shape. So madali pong mag-ipon-ipon yung tubig dyan sa may gitna banda area. So flashy yung river po. Maliban po doon sa X-band radar, mayroon po tayong, ang Pag-asa ay mayroon pong tinatawag namin na WARF, at naka-purchase din kami ng software na iba na kung saan magbibigay sa atin ng forecast rainfall. So yung forecast rainfall na ito, isasama po ito doon sa paggawa ng bulletins or kung flood warnings. Ibig sabihin nito, days before magkaroon ng baha ay alam na po natin kung gaano kalaki yung tubig na babagsak dyan sa upstream at sa downstream. Ibig sabihin, magkakaroon po tayo ng enough time para po ma-evacuate natin yung mga tao before pa dumating yung baha.
So by days na po ang lead time dahil sa sistema na to, tama po ba?
Mayroon pa tayong 5 days po, tama po.
5 days. Okay, so sir, there's a lot of data coming in and I'm sure yung mga LGUs have access to the data. Pero can you give us an idea kung paano na-disseminate yung data mula sa system all the way down to the LGU, yung mga decision makers po natin?
Una, i-restart muna ako doon sa observation. From the observation, through telemetering system, ito po yung pinapadala sa ating subcenter or river center kung saan nakalocate ito doon sa Mulugan. Mulugan sa El Salvador. Then from there, mayroon din pong access ang Puro na LGU na doon sa data. So, yun po yung magagamit nila para sa kanilang mga preparations sa pagbabaha po. Then nakaano rin po ito, mayroon din po itong ilalagay po din po natin sa online.
Sir, this is in cooperation with JICA, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, yung JICA has been present dito sa Pilipinas trying to help mitigate disasters all throughout the region. Gaano po kalaki yung tulong ng JICA sa pag-implement po ng project na to?
Sila po ang nag-fund dito, sir. They funded, binigyan po tayo ng around 930 million Japanese yen. It's around 360 million pesos para po magawa po yung system na to. So napakalaki po ng tulong ng Japanese government sa atin po pertaining dito sa disaster mitigation. Ang JICA or ang government of Japan has been helping us on this endeavor from 1972. Mula noong 1972, itinatag natin or ginawa, funded din ng Japanese government. Ang una natin ay yung Pampanga River Basin dito sa Luzon po.
Sir,
so yun po yung pinag-moving. Yes po.
Yes, sir. Sa palagay niyo po ba, can this particular system be replicated po in other parts of the country? And considering po that this could be the start of a more modern, a more advanced way of identifying potential problems po?
For the major river basins, for the 18 major river basins dito sa Pilipinas, mayroon na po tayo mga installations na ganito. Ang kailangan lang po natin idagdag ay yung mga X-band radars po.
Alright.
Siguro, isama rin po natin yung mga principal river basins kung saan nag-uumpisa na rin po ang DOST Pag-asa mag-install ng mga equipment para magamit po ng mga LGU sa kanilang early warning for flood.
Up next, we'll be exploring how the culinary industry can play a crucial role in promoting sustainability. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more insightful discussions after this break. Now welcome back to Watching Weather HQ. I'm Paolo del Rosario. More businesses are recognizing the importance of sustainability, and the Alvista Hotel is leading the way with eco-friendly practices that benefit both the environment and local communities. To know how the culinary industry can support sustainability, watch this.
Using sustainability for me in the culinary industry is using more local ingredients that are found within a certain area you are in. And sometimes you can't do that. We can get source out vegetables from Baguio and other places. But we have a community garden here in Taal Vista, and we have lettuces, arugula, and kale.
Mhm.
And we have malunggay. We have other fruit-bearing trees that, when they are in season, we use them in our buffet or in some of our specials.
Well, one of the things that you're known for is the malunggay pancit verde, and you mentioned malunggay as part of it. You all of this is sourced locally in your garden. I'm sure at least a big chunk of it. When people think about where they source the ingredients, just how big of that is how big of a factor is that actually in terms of reducing one the carbon footprint and making sure that it is sustainable in the longer run.
Um, since we have a malunggay tree in the property, or a few of them around the side of the ridge, it's very easy for us to ask our gardeners to get them.
Yeah.
But also, it's very accessible in our local markets.
Mhm. When you take a look at how the conception of all of this, can you tell us a bit about the idea of the menu that you actually do create with sustainability in mind?
With sustainability, we try to use as much local items as we can, especially with the given area we have. We used to have a special. The first special we had, we used maliputo from Taal Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And then we use local vegetables from Benguet. We use singkamas to stuff it with carrots and all that. And we use basil from the garden as well. But for this particular dish, I've been using malunggay pesto for the longest time. It's nothing new for a lot of us. It's just another alternative for basil, which sometimes when it rains, it's really hard to source out
Yeah.
in our gardens. So it's very simple and easy, and we use cashews instead of pine nuts, again, to lessen the carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
For me, lessening the carbon footprint is when we get imported items. Sometimes it's difficult to get good items like vegetables or protein.
Yeah, because you do source a lot of it locally, I can only imagine that you have probably a deeper appreciation of the local dishes around your area in particular. Is that the case? Because the Taal area in general does have a rich culinary history, especially when it comes to heritage Filipino food.
Definitely. And there are a lot of farms in the area. So there's a lot to look forward to and actually utilize. It's just finding the right supplier.
Mhm. When you look at this whole concept of sustainability in the kitchen itself, apart from using the ingredients, have you changed the way that you do things, the way that you lead your team to make sure that there is this sort of shift to be more conscious about it?
I think it's just being more creative. If you look at it this way, we grew up. We didn't have during my time when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was born in the 70s and early 80s. I was already cooking, and it was mostly local items we
Yeah.
were using. So it's just going back to that and just being more creative.
I really like that. By the way, you don't look like you were born in the 70s. Siguro mga late 80s, 90s, mga ganon. But let's take a look at the technology that you actually use in the Taal Vista, because there is something called the Orca biodigester, which
Yes,
converts food into a
I
safe
love this
liquid.
machine.
Yeah, so can you explain what this is? Because I read descriptions, but I'm not quite sure what it does.
It's a biodigester. We used to have a lot of uh, pre-service and post-service waste that really just goes to good garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Then since we've been very, very into sustainability the past few years, we eventually found this machine that helps us dispose of all this stuff, lessening all the garbage that we send out to the landfills.
Mm-hmm. When you take a look at that, is that not normal in your experience in terms of kitchens having this type of technology and maybe perhaps not thinking about the waste left behind in the kitchen after a day's work?
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Is this not a typical thing in your opinion that should be adopted by other kitchens?
I think it should be adopted by those businesses that can afford the technology.
Yeah.
Or maybe one thing that the LGU can do is have something like this in an area where restaurants can bring. Because not a lot of companies can afford this because it's quite pricey. But that would be a good project for LGUs for the food service industry in their districts.
Mhm. It feels like there has been investment in the technology, obviously, by your company. And is that
Yes.
felt all throughout the property and not just in some of the efforts done within the kitchen?
Yes, I believe so because our president, Miss Elizabeth C, is a very staunch supporter of sustainability, and all this like Plate for the Planet and all that was because of WWF, who had helped us with a program.
Hmm.
Even for our buffets, we have this buffet tags that just get what you need or get what you can eat so that there's not a lot of food waste. So those small things, I think, help out a lot,
You know,
making people conscious or the diners more conscious.
we're actually seeing some of the material from Taal and Taal Vista, and one of them is a Plate for the Planet and
Yes.
different other obviously set menus with an advocacy. When you craft menus with the earth in mind, what do you want the consumer, your customers, what do you want them to leave with when it comes to their experience dining with this particular set menu?
So sometimes you'd like to impress them by them thinking, oh, you can do this with this ingredient, this
Mhm.
particular ingredient. Oh, it's local and you made it taste this way.
And of course,
Well,
looking ahead to the different plans that you have, obviously it's in the menu, it's in the processes, it's in the technology that you have in the kitchen, and there are best practices also done by the Alvista Hotel in general. But are there any other steps that you feel you could take to advance this even further, especially where you are in the kitchen?
Well, I think we can do further menu planning also to help again reduce more or lessen the waste.
Hmm.
Like when we have forecast our guests and everything, we try to gauge how much they're going to be consuming,
Yeah.
help us lessen our production and thereby lessening the waste.
How do you manage keeping the quality high? Because some people think that okay, it has to be green, it has to be eco-friendly. Some people have the notion or the idea na okay, dahil green to, maybe it's less convenient. But is that the case for you guys? Do you find yourself sacrificing anything when it comes to quality, trying to serve this purpose?
Not really. There's a lot of good local produce out there.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of looking for it and not taking too much stocks in by scheduling them properly, arriving and just using them for a day or two, maybe 3 days maximum. And then that's when you request new items
Mhm.
come in.
Is that the most difficult part of your job in particular, sourcing out the local produce that is one of
Sometimes,
quality?
yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Yes, sometimes sourcing because some of these farmers are small scale. So sometimes um, the greens are sold out easily if you because there are a lot of people interested, or sometimes it's raining or the weather does not permit, and they just are not available.
And that's a wrap for this week's Weather HQ. Don't miss us next week right here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel. I'm Paolo del Rosario. Have a great weekend.